Joining us now, the former Defense Secretary, the former CIA Director, Leon Panetta. Mr. Secretary, thanks so much for joining us. Let's get right to the issue of Rudy Giuliani. On Sunday, the president's lawyer told the New York Times that President Trump described the Trump Tower Moscow project discussions as, quote, and I'm quoting him, going on from the day I announced to the day I won. That's Giuliani quoting the president. Less than 24 hours later, Giuliani now says that was just a hypothetical, not a real conversation. Why doesn't the president's lawyer seem to have his story straight?
I suspect because no one really understands what the real story is at this point, and Rudy Giuliani is basically operating like a human pinball machine in which his ball is bouncing around, lighting up different facts that he throws out there and then reversing them. This is only extending the web of lies that we've seen take place for the last 2 years. And every time he comes up with another story, every time he comes up with another explanation, it only proves the fact that the defendant, in this case the president, as well as those associated with the president, have basically been telling too many stories that simply don't establish themselves in truth.
You also heard Giuliani say, and I'm quoting him now, so what if the president discussed Michael Cohen's testimony on this issue of a Trump Tower in Moscow? What does that tell you?
Well, again, it just doesn't relate to what the facts would really establish here. Because if, in fact, the president was conducting those discussions with Russia throughout the time he was running for president, it explains an awful lot about why the president made friendly gestures towards the Russians, whether it was taking their position on NATO, whether it was making complimentary remarks about Putin, whether it was asking the Russians to get involved in the email controversy. It begins to explain a lot about why this president was so chummy with the Russians.
Well, so what you're suggesting is that he was chummy in order to see the Trump organization make money as far as the Moscow Trump Tower project was concerned?
Well, this president is a New York developer who's interested in making money. That's been his whole a professional approach to dealing with people and with anyone. It's about making money, and when there are hundreds of millions of dollars involved in this project in Moscow, there is no question that I believe the president was doing everything he could to try to appease the Russians and make them buy that deal.
As you know, the New York Times has some new details on how the Trump administration's decision to lift sanctions on Oleg Deripaska, this Russian oligarch, is actually benefiting the Russian oligarch, even though they're framing it as though this close associate of Vladimir Putin had to make some major concessions. How do you explain that?
I don't think there is an explanation. I mean, why would we be providing relief to a Russian oligarch with regards to sanctions? There's no reason to do this, particularly at a time when we're concerned about Russia, concerned about how Russia is behaving, not only in the Ukraine, but in Syria and elsewhere, not only concerned about how the Russians behaved in 2016 and going after our election process. These oligarchs are themselves involved with the Russian government. Why would we want to provide relief to somebody who has probably in some way damaged American interests?
All this comes, as you know, Mr. Secretary, amid the longest government shutdown in American history. On Saturday, the president offered temporary protection for some undocumented immigrants in exchange for a border wall funding. Is a broader immigration deal possible while the government is still shut down?
Wolf, I think this is a very damaging period for the United States of America. We are a country in which our government is in shutdown. It's damaging our economy, will most likely lead to a recession if it continues. It is hurting 800,000 American employees and their families, and it is hurting, frankly, our own credibility as a country in dealing with nations abroad. All of these are weakening the United States of America. The focus here should be on reopening the government. That has to be the primary focus. And frankly, there's no backdoor way to do this. I know Mitch McConnell's trying to put this package together, but the reality is you cannot package these issues, because if you do, it sends a message, not only to this president, but to future presidents, that all you have to do is shut the government down in order to get your way with regards to something you want funded. That is not the right message that we should be sending. My view is open the government, even if you do it on a short-term basis, and then make a commitment both in the House and the Senate to take up a comprehensive border security approach. That's the one way to try to resolve this issue.
Leon Panetta, thanks as usual for joining us.
You're welcome.